Yo, what's up? This is JayDennis with the JayDennis Podcast for Tuesday, March 9th, 2021. Although the day got away from me, so I'm actually recording this on Wednesday, March 10th. And we're gonna celebrate why March 10th is such a special day here in a little bit, as soon as I'm done feeling like Miss Lindsay. I don't know why I start talking like Miss Lindsay here in a minute, but let's just go ahead and get back to my normal voice. Do I sound like Miss Lindsay, or do I sound like the oh no guy from Family Guy? Who is he with the 10 items or less? All right, already less than a minute in, and half of you are already gone. All right, now that I've weeded out the weirdos, let's actually get to the podcast. So yeah, I don't know. I just didn't end up recording it yesterday. I have this struggle where generally in March so far, I'm kind of crushing it with a few things, but the whole "you're only as strong as your weakest link" thing really gets me, because I know in this life you can't do everything perfectly, but I find on days where if I suck at something, I try to compensate by getting other things taken care of. Like if I fall apart on one discipline, I will double down on another one to kind of make the day feel more complete, provided it's not like a day where I'm resting, because I don't guilt myself into this whole, yeah, man, I'm all about that grind culture. I keep it 100, entrepreneur, hashtag, rise and grind. I'm not that kind of person. I'm not. But I am partially susceptible to the American semi-toxic cultural stereotype of productivity, but I'm not going to fall into the trap of reducing myself to my income or my job or my career. But it's for personal happiness and for energy and for spirituality and all that other stuff. So ultimately, I'm okay with this lifestyle. Ultimately, I'm feeling good when I actually am aware of where I'm slipping and how I can maybe do something else to make things a little bit better. So like if one day I don't have a very solid work day, I might compensate by doing some sort of media, some sort of video, or play a lot of guitar or clean or something. If I don't meditate, maybe I'll go for a jog. Or occasionally I'll have a perfect day where I kind of check off all the boxes, and I've had a few of those days this month anyway, which is awesome. But something new that I've done this month is, for a couple of years now, I've kind of capped my jogs to 1 mile. Hold on a sec. You know those little drain catch things that you can put in your sink? Little metal mesh net things you can put so that certain things don't go down into the garbage disposal or the sink. Yeah, well, sometimes my cat will try to dig around in it to get some sort of additional food beyond their breakfast, because I scrape out cat food out of a can. It's prescription food for one of my cats, but my other cat really likes it. But I rinse out the can and I recycle it, but sometimes little bits of food get stuck in the thing if I don't rinse it out of the way, so that she tries to get it. And she got to a point where I had like a glass dish sitting on top of it, and she was trying to dig through it through the glass dish, so I just heard a bunch of clanking. The dish weighs probably more than the cat, and she's fucking trying to get it, so I just hear a bunch of clanking, and I just go in there and I'm like, do you mind? Yep, that's my life. I have open dialogues with my animals. And I don't know if you could hear that, but I was sipping on some coffee. I will not be purchasing this creamer again, but I don't like to waste shit. But I bought fucking Fruity Pebble coffee creamer, and it tastes terrible, but it's starting to kind of grow on me a little bit, to the point where I'm about halfway through it. So maybe I'll have it done in the next 2 weeks. And then I can finally buy new creamer and get this shit out of my life. Like I could just dump it out and be done with it, but I don't like to waste stuff. I drink enough coffee to where I can justify it. And that's how I got to where I'm at today with my success, is I don't waste shit generally. But occasionally my wife and I will be doing something. She's the same way. She doesn't like to waste stuff either. But like if she doesn't like something, there's only like a few bites left or a little bit left, I'm like, just throw it away. You don't have to finish it. Trying to shift ourselves out of this we used to be broke mindset, and now we're like doing a lot better. It's like, yeah, we're not freaking rolling in the dough, but we're not broke either. We're doing pretty well. So anyway, what was I talking about? Oh yeah, so my 2 mile jogs. I've decided, instead of just doing this 1 mile lap that I always do, and I just found out that I have a little bit of a respiratory problem. Nothing super serious, but serious enough to allow me to get the vaccine sooner. Even though I have that, I'm not going to let that stop me from trying to get like a personal best. Like I used to have like, I think my best used to maybe be like a 7.5 or an 8-minute mile. I don't try to beat everybody at that. Like I'm going to do what I can. I'm not really a big cardio person, so whatever. But I was like, I usually feel pretty good at the end of these 1 mile runs, but I should probably push myself a little bit harder. So instead of doing a lap, I go down the main road that I live off of, which is just like a freaking 4 mile stretch. Probably longer if you take it all the way down. It's probably way longer than that actually, but at least in my immediate area and surrounding suburban areas, if I go down it, it's a couple miles. So I drove my car to see how far I would need to go, how far and how far back to do 2 miles. And I marked it and I was like, okay, if I leave my house and I go this far down this road and I turn around at this street and go back to my house, it'll be 2 miles. I've done that twice the past week, and I got like a 25-minute 2 mile run, and I feel good. Like on the way back, I actually get like a second wind, and I actually feel better. And I lap it. I see how far I go on the way up, and then I time it and see how far I go up on the way back. And usually the way back I'm faster. Listening to the new A Day to Remember album on the first jog, and they got a little bit different with this album, but I liked most of the songs. I can see how some people might not love the album, but I think it sounds pretty good. There's a handful of great songs, and then there's a few that are just like, not great, but I wouldn't shit on the entire album by any means. Definitely some good songs on there, but I'm going to listen to it again before I give a more in-depth opinion. And then the other day I was listening to Chevelle's This Type of Thinking Could Do Us In. So I got everything I need to do the actual video for my ranked and reviewed of Limp Bizkit. I was trying to look new metal as fuck for the new metal kings. So I grew up my sideburns again, and I went on Etsy and bought a vintage, like literally vintage, like it was manufactured in the 90s. Bought a vintage Adidas jacket. So I'll have all that for the video now. And I've had the ranking done for a while anyway, so I can finally make the video. Probably going to do that in the next few days. And in the meantime, I'm working on the Chevelle Discography because they just put out a new album this year. It's like Narisha. I don't know how to say it, but first impression is it's good. A couple of songs kind of weirded me out, but I'm going to have to listen to it again. But I'm doing ranked and reviewed of their 9 studio albums, and so far I've gone back through and listened to every single one except for La Gorgala from 2014. I think I've listened to everything else, though, already. Like, I woke up early this morning, and then I took like a little 40-minute siesta while listening to Point Number 1. I've never listened to their actual first album from start to finish, and I was pleasantly surprised. But listen to everything else. I listened to the albums from my childhood. I re-listened to some 2010s albums like Hats Off to the Bull, North Corridor. I haven't listened to La Gorgala all the way through yet, but I've listened to Sci-Fi Crimes, of course, the big three from the 2000s. Wonder What's Next, This Type of Thing Can Do Us In, and Benacera. I think that's all 9 that I mentioned. So, been enjoying that. Been enjoying revisiting some of these non-metal bands, even though they're technically alternative metal, but like the type of metal that I listen to, like new metal or metalcore, thrash metal, all that stuff. This is a little bit different, but Chevelle, almost kind of in the same vein as like Breaking Benjamin. I love the alternative metal sound. That's part of what Raptor Riot strives to write, but Chevelle's got its own flavor. I don't think I'd try to replicate it, but I certainly respect the hell out of it, and they're still probably one of my favorite bands of that genre. And yeah, I guess before I jump onto the next podcast clip, I'll just finish off with a quick update on Resident Evil. I did finally beat Resident Evil 3. I got the Platinum Trophy. I finally beat... I had like 52 out of 58 trophies in the game, but as soon as I got an S ranking on Inferno, which I learned how to speed run, it allowed me to get all the past trophies from getting S rankings on all the other ones. So by doing that, I checked off the last 6 in one swoop. I didn't try to get an S ranking on all the other ones beforehand. I just did it on Inferno. So it took some time, but I finally fucking did it. I beat Final Nemesis. Basically, all the difficulty is saved for the end with that. And I didn't use any special weapons, but I did use the coins to like improve my defense and my recovery. So I'd say it was a little bit handicapped, but I didn't use like the infinite launcher or anything else to get through these harder difficulties. I actually wanted to experience the game. Like these newer Resident Evil games, they're supposed to be played on the hardest difficulties if you want that true classic Resident Evil survival horror series, because like when you play games on harder difficulties, that intensity really does kick in, and if you're a hard person to scare like me, it ups it a bit. So I enjoyed it. It took me fucking probably like 6 hours of just constant dying to finally get through an under 2 hour run, and you can only save 5 times, so I had to save at all the right spots, but I did. And yeah. Oh yeah, so I mean, if I just finished Resident Evil 3 a year later, all the trophies and everything, for the most part by myself, I try not to use online guides or whatever, but again, I don't game for a living, so I kind of do like a half measure where for certain things like hidden bobbleheads and other little achievements, I do of course use the internet, but for the most part, when I play a game through the first time, I try to beat it. I usually beat it just fine on my own, but like new games aren't as hard as old games with like puzzles or like critical thinking. I don't know, man. I feel like they're dumbing them down for us, all about the action and everything, but I do know that certain genres and certain games or certain, I guess the term is IPs, are, which I think stands for intellectual property, there are some where they are figuring out how to make them harder. It's just you got to find the right game. So I don't want to shit on a whole thing when there's like, it's just like people say that there's like music sucks now. It's like, no, you just have to find the right band. Like things are constantly progressing, but also regressing at the same time. You just have to find the right things. But yeah, like certain trends or certain lightning in a bottle moments, like it's going to be hard to replicate those as we go through time, but that's just kind of how it works. And it's hard to admit as somebody who loves the idea of living during a certain existence for several reasons. But all that to say, now that I finished Resident Evil 3, what else am I going to do between now and I think early May, when the Resident Evil 8 Village comes out? I think I'm going to take a little bit of a break, maybe for like a few weeks, but leading up to it, say maybe middle of April, I'm probably going to replay Resident Evil 7 and try to get all those achievements or trophies. I'm not an Xbox person, I'm a PlayStation, I gotta say trophies. Get all those trophies, actually beat the game on Nightmare Mode or Ethan Must Die, whatever it's called. Because I feel like I've gotten much better at the games now. That's the best thing about Resident Evil 2 and 3 Remake is they play so smooth that they kind of get you like better at shooting and dodging and a few other things. So, or playing more defensively instead of just going offensively. Like you learn that as a man growing up that, oh shit, certain music or movies that I grew up with, I see them in a different light now as a man. But it's the same thing with video games. Like, oh my god, I approached this game all wrong. Like, good thing Pokemon Red and Blue and Yellow were broken in a sense. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't. I don't know. But I did have some sense of strategy back then, and I was pretty intelligent with games, but nowhere to the level that I am now as a nearly 30-year-old man. Anyway, so that's probably what I'm going to do, Resident Evil 7, but I might take a little bit of a break so that I can focus on, I don't know, getting my house together, taking care of a few other things, spring cleaning, make some more money. But yeah, I'm still tracking my screen time and my headphone usage. Frankly, the past week it's kind of gone back up a little bit, but still nowhere near to the degree that it was two-ish weeks ago, where it was like fucking 9 or 10 hours a day because I'd go to bed with my phone or go to bed listening to music. I think I might have overcorrected the first week and just completely gone somewhat cold turkey. But I think the first big step was just going to bed without headphones in. Just not doing that the past 2 weeks, I feel like has been good for me. Enjoying that silence. I might actually read an article about silence here on one of the next clips. And I'll post the link to what I'm reading about. It's just talking about the value and the why we need to stop being constantly stimulated all the time for various reasons. And again, I'll link it in the description. But basically, that was just the first big step, was just not listening to music or comedy overnight and falling asleep with headphones in my ears. That was the first big step. But the other thing, of course, was just like not constantly listening to news in the background with my phone. If anything, I just save up a queue on YouTube and listen to it on my desktop in the background sometimes while I'm doing other work. But I'm also trying to cut back on that too, because just trying to multitask, unless it's mindless work, it's just not good. But it has gone back up a little bit, but nowhere near to where it was. It went from like 9 to 10 hours a day. I trimmed it down to like 4 the first week. Now it's probably back up to like 5 or 5.5. But still trying to be mindful. I've been wearing them more the past week, the headphones, but when my wife comes in the room, no matter what I'm doing, I take them out immediately. I unplug them and put them in my pocket. So she talked to me about that before too, and I agree with her. I'm not going to argue. She's right. I usually listen to it at a low volume so that if something's happening, I can hear it. But still, it's just better if I don't have them in all the time. So I've been working on that also. Just a quick couple of points. Like I mentioned earlier on in the podcast, it's a special day that we're going to celebrate March 10th. Except not really. We're going to fucking make fun of it, and we're going to pray that people are going to be okay. But if it still stands, as it was announced last week, Texas, and maybe some other states, but mostly Texas, I guess, is officially reopening today. Because apparently personal choice and not being told what to do by the government is important. Yeah, that sounds great on paper, but not during a health crisis and not during a pandemic. This talking point has been beaten to death over the last year, and it's complete bullshit. By you going out there and asserting your own illusion of freedom, you're effectively taking away other people's right to live. You're going out there bitching about having to wear a piece of cloth over your face, and I think later on in the podcast you're going to hear me rant about this once again. You're going out there and you're bitching about having to wear a piece of cloth over your face. It's the cheapest, it's the cheapest and the easiest, but it's also the most effective way to help stop the spread of the virus. It works. But you're going to let some governor who's trying to take focus off the fact that he let a bunch of his constituents die in a snowstorm that they weren't prepared for because, once again, crooked capitalism or crony capitalism and deregulation and a horrible sense of privatization left a bunch of people who really don't have a say in the matter screwed. The same thing with like their utility prices. This is what happens when you have shitty people running your state. I'm trying to take the heat off of that by trying to double down and do something twice as stupid. So the country is getting on track to some sort of light at the end of the tunnel. I think like 10% of the population is double vaccinated at this point. Joe Biden is going to probably more than double his goal of 100 million shots in 100 days. Definitely on track to far exceed that. And then we get a fourth one. We get a fourth vaccine beyond the Johnson & Johnson. It's only going to get better. So I'm hoping this month I'm able to get mine. And yeah, again, it all ties together. But again, just this whole illusion of personal choice and personal responsibility, it's not just about you. Your actions and what you do and your beliefs, they affect other people. We're a social breed. We are a species that are not mutually exclusive from each other. It's okay to have a culture of individualism, but at the end of the day, we're all, oh God, I just used an expression I hated. At the end of the day, it's such a nothing statement, just like it is what it is. I'm being nitpicky. But yeah, it's bullshit. It's selfish. And I really hope that states like that don't set the rest of the country back. And I think the Texans deserve better, much better. That whole state full of a diverse group of people just because they vote Republican doesn't mean they should be subjected to that. Because there's probably plenty of conservative people out there that wear masks and are trying to keep their family safe. Yet you vote in these assholes that are literally stripping you of your safety. And it's not just in Texas, it's in Florida, it's in Georgia. And I know that some other blue states have made mistakes too, but nowhere near to this degree per capita. Okay? Those are the numbers, those are the facts. And it just goes to show you that on a larger scale, that conservatives, Republicans, they are not about policy at all. They're all about, at least, especially now, but it's been taking place since the Reagan years, they're not about policy. They're all about culture wars. All they care about is bitching about things that make them feel good or about fear-mongering about things that aren't actually issues. It's not the virus that actually kills people. It's the immigrants that are coming, that are taking your jobs, that our private business owners are giving to them. They're paying taxes. They're not getting anything back for it. They're probably paying more in taxes than a lot of these wealthy assholes that don't pay anything in taxes. Again, aside from tax cuts, Republicans are not about policy at all. They're all about culture wars. It's all about distractions, and that's why I 0% identify with them. And in order for us to get better information, more accurate information, something else needs to be reinstated that I believe was repealed. I think it was repealed in the 1980s by Ronald Reagan during that era. Once again, very dangerous decade, as glitzy and glamorous as it looked. It was great for a handful of people, but for the rest, it set the stage for disaster. We need to bring the Fairness Doctrine back, because when you have these news network shows come on and just straight out lie to you or purposely not give you all the information, that's what the Fairness Doctrine does. It says that if you are a newscast or whatever, you're giving out information, you have to equally provide full context of the story that you're reporting. If it's got two sides, you got to show both sides. Not everything is a two-side issue, but like, you can't go on TV and bitch about fucking Dr. Seuss and not mention that it has nothing to do with The Cat in the Hat or your childhood favorites. You can't go on there and not talk about the actual books that were brought down. That's deceptive. That's lying. And that's just kind of low-hanging fruit that's an example. But if we want to bring trust back into the media, back into especially corporate media, who are all about advertising and ratings, so they have to manufacture consent and they have to, create all this hysteria. We have to bring the Fairness Doctrine back so that people can start thinking critically again and start having better information. And I'm JayDennis, and I just once again solved all the world's problems on my fucking podcast. All right. Now I'm going to read that article that I mentioned in one of the last clips. It's on upliftconnect.com, or you can just type in, I guess, on Google, or check the link in the description. Science says silence is vital for our brains, and this came out a few days ago as of this podcast. So, yeah, the proof that silence heals. Let me see. Should I read the whole thing? Yeah, I can probably read the whole thing. It's not a super long article. The value of silence is felt by everybody at some point in their life. Silence is comforting, nourishing, and cozy. It opens us up to inspiration and nurtures the mind, body, and soul. Meanwhile, the madness of the noisy world is drowning out our creativity, our interconnection, and hampering our resilience. Science is now showing that silence may be what we need to regenerate our exhausted brains and bodies. And again, this is kind of what I'm talking about with scaling back on the screen time and the headphones, and this kind of... I saw this article after I started that, so it kind of helped conveniently buttress that idea. Okay. Studies show that noise has a powerful effect on our brains, causing elevated levels of stress hormones. Sound travels to the brain as electrical signals via the ear. Even when we are sleeping, these sound waves cause the body to react and activate the amygdala, the part of the brain associated with memory and emotion, leading to the release of stress hormones. I don't know why I sounded like Moira there for a second from Schitt's Creek. Hormones. So living in a consistently noisy environment will cause you to experience extremely high levels of these harmful hormones. Yeah, makes sense. Interestingly, the word noise is said to come from the Latin word nausea, in parentheses, disgust or nausea. Or it's spelled Nausia, nausea. Or the Latin word noxia, meaning hurt, damage, or injury. Noise has been linked to high blood pressure, heart disease, tinnitus, and loss of sleep. We've all experienced the detrimental effects of noise pollution. Excessive noise can be a major affront to the physical senses, and today more and more people are identifying as highly sensitive and unable to function in chaotic and noisy environments. But now science has the proof. Not only does noise hurt, but also silence heals. Let's see, am I about halfway through this? Yeah, about halfway through it. The effects of silence. In 2011, the World Health Organization examined and quantified its health burden in Europe. It concluded that the 340 million residents of Western Europe, about the population of the U.S., were losing 1 million years of healthy life every year due to noise. WHO also said that the root cause of 3,000 heart disease deaths were due to excessive noise. A study by Professor Gary W. Evans from Cornell University, published in Physiological Science, charted the effects of airport noise on school children near Munich's airport. The study showed that children exposed to noise develop a stress response, which actually caused them to ignore the noise. He found that the children ignored both the harmful noises of the airport along with every other more everyday noises such as speech. Scientists didn't actively set out to study the effects of silence, but instead discovered its benefits by accident. Silence first began to appear in scientific research as a control or baseline against which scientists compare the effects of noise or music. Physician Luciano Bernardi studied the physiological effects of noise and music in 2006, making a startling discovery. When the subjects of his study were exposed to the random stretches of silence in between the noise and music, they experienced a powerful effect. The 2-minute pauses were far more relaxing for the brain than the relaxing music or longer silence that was in place before the experiment started. In fact, Bernardi's irrelevant blank pauses became the most important aspect of the study. One of his key findings was that silence is heightened by contrasts. Many meditation teachers and practitioners can attest to this, and spiritual teachers advise students to take frequent meditative pauses throughout the day. That's kind of what I'm working on these past few weeks, unplugging. Though we may think of silence as a lack of input, science says otherwise. The brain recognizes silence and responds powerfully. Later research by a Duke University regenerative biologist, M. Kirst, discovered that 2 hours of silence per day prompted cell development in the hippocampus, the brain region related to the formation of memory, involving the senses. This is the last part. Taking time to switch off. According to the attention restoration theory, when you are in an environment with lower levels of sensory input, the brain can recover some of its cognitive abilities. With our digital world, our brains get less time to switch off. We are constantly processing enormous amounts of information. Research has shown the constant demands of modern life are placing a lot of stress on our prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for making decisions, solving problems, and more. When we spend time alone in silence, our brains are able to relax and release this constant focus. Research found that silence helps new cells to differentiate into neurons and integrate into the system, and that when we experience silence, our brains are able to work at better understanding our internal and external environments. We can make sense of our lives and gain perspective, something that is vital for our overall well-being. While noise creates stress, silence relieves stress and tension in the brain and body. Silence is replenishing and nourishing our cognitive resources. Noise makes us lose our concentration, cognitive powers, and causes decreased motivation and brain functioning, as backed up by research into the effects of noise. But studies show that spending some time in silence can amazingly restore what was lost through exposure to excessive noise. The ancient spiritual masters have known this all along. Silence heals. Silence takes us deeply into ourselves, and silence balances the body and mind. Now science says the same thing. The healing benefits of nature and stillness are well documented, but now we could add this quest for health and well-being, the nourishment of our brains. The simple yet ancient experience of silence could just be, well, the healing balm we need to quell our crazy modern lifestyle. So yeah, again, I'll put the link to this in the description. If it's a longer article, I would usually just do like the cliff notes or the parts that I liked, but that thing was probably entirely worth reading, which I just did. Yeah, that very much supports why, and again, I saw this like a week after I started doing this anyway, why I'm doing what I'm doing, why I'm not listening to music falling asleep anymore, why I'm actually taking more time to do things in silence. I don't need to listen to music, podcasts, or the news while I'm washing dishes. I can actually just enjoy the silence for a few minutes. It's sad that it's gotten to that point, but since I was a kid, back in the 90s, the rapid rate of progression of technology, or development of technology and everything, has made it to where constant stimulation, screen time, noise, all that stuff is just constantly present. And maybe older generations are less affected by this because they've been more grandfathered into being more okay with being bored, I guess. But this does affect everybody. Maybe not equally, but I've just noticed that the last few weeks I have felt better not falling asleep to music or looking at stuff less, or like, of course I've known the benefits of meditation for a while, for a few years, but that's very intentional time. Whereas with passive time, where you're not trying to multitask, like listen to stuff while you're doing mundane tasks like washing dishes or picking stuff up, I really do feel, I don't think it's a placebo effect, but I really do feel more calm and at peace, and then ultimately more energized afterwards when I actually do take those little breaks. And again, it's sad that we've gotten to that point where like the adage that's come out the past few years is we used to use the internet to escape the real world, and now we use the real world to escape the internet or nature, real world, whatever you want to call it. It's flipped, and it's gross. And as much as I used to try to justify my excessive use of screen time by saying, oh, it's mostly just audio, the audio was damaging too. I want to preserve my hearing. I want to preserve my damn senses, not overly stimulate myself to the point where if I put my phone down for 5 minutes, or I put down the stimulation for 5 minutes, I'm not just like a fucking drug addict trying to get back to it. If this affects me at this level, I can only imagine how much worse it is for other people. And of course, there are documentaries already out there that talk about how bad certain device or social media addictions are. I forget the name of it, but I talked about it late last year or early this year, I think, about smartphone addiction, or how these social media companies try to keep you on your screen. Like it's disgusting. If the product is free You are the product. And we do have personal choice in this life. I talked about personal choice earlier, but it doesn't mean there's other factors that aren't at play. When you're talking about personal choice in the context of a pandemic, that matters less because your personal choice can effectively harm or even kill other people. So your personal choice to not wear a damn mask becomes a lot less meaningful, and you look like a fucking bitch if you complain about that or don't abide by this temporary rule. We have the personal choice of how much screen time or social media or whatever consumption we take, but it doesn't mean that these companies, these data collectors, aren't pulling strings and treating this like a casino to keep us addicted to it. It's both a systematic and a cultural issue. That's why it caps off this article as such. The simple yet ancient experience of silence could be the healing balm we need to quell our crazy modern lifestyle. If you thought lifestyles were crazy back in the 80s when those big ass cell phones were coming out or credit cards were coming out, people were still engaged. Not everybody had headphones in. Like, I watch movies or shows or clips from like the 80s or the 90s or even the early 2000s, like music videos. Not everybody's holding fucking cell phones and like ruining the experience. So like, I don't know if we're ever going to go back to something like that. This might be like just a permanent thing, but I think if we just kind of, especially with this powerful platform known as the JayDennis Podcast, raise awareness to this and kind of realize that, yeah, a lot of us are going to outgrow this whole social media thing and everything else, then maybe we can all start to enjoy more silence and less noise, because ultimately noise is just a distraction for various reasons, whether it's depression, anxiety, sadness, anger. You have to let the silence rule you for parts of your day so that you can deal with your demons and live a better life. Yes, hi, hello. Welcome in. It's Thursday, March 4th in the afternoon. And oddly enough, I'm at the same place that I was last time when a insurrection was happening. It was January 6th where I was at the vet recording a podcast clip, except today looks much safer. Thank God. Anyway, I don't know why, but... Well, I mean, I do know why. But I kind of just feel like railing against people who don't wear masks again. Masks again. Grown-ass adults acting like children, bitching about having to wear a piece of cloth over their face. And it's not just adults, it's not just your citizens, it's your politicians too, who are perfectly fine getting vaccinations well ahead of you because they have power and money. But as soon as they get in front of some idiots to have a stupid speech in front of, they start railing against, new development, new science is out. Now we have to wear, to be safe, if you don't have an N95 mask, maybe you should wear a cloth mask and a surgical mask. Yeah, newsflash, fucko. Some of us have been doing that the entire time already. So, I don't understand why people fucking bitch about wearing a piece of fabric over the face. It's so simple, yet it's super effective at preventing transmission of a disease. Why do all these uneducated fuckers think they know better than the scientists? They don't. There's nothing that they know that the scientists don't. And just because there is corruption or flaws with like media, or even sometimes there's corruption and flaws within the scientific community. The scientific community is significantly harder. Oh, hold on a sec. Remix. Significantly harder to corrupt, because just on its basis, it's about logic, reason, facts, questioning everything. It's less about speculative opinion and, commentary. There's more of a desire for facts behind it. So yeah, some studies get corrupted by certain industries because they fund studies to try to suit their agenda, but they also still have more of like I feel like scientists have more integrity. They're more likely to have integrity than journalists are. Journalism used to be a much more respected, truth-seeking, fair, unbiased profession. It's not as much anymore. There's still plenty of good journalists out there. There's plenty of good independent media out there that's not corporate media. But I would believe that the scientific community is significantly less corrupted than the community of journalists. But anyway, what does all that mean? It just means that just because you find you take umbrage, or you think you're challenging, or you think you know better than what the science community has to offer because there's something wrong with it. Nothing is perfect. Just because something's not perfect or without flaw, it doesn't mean that all the good and all the vocation and merit that they have is without. So it just aggravates me to no end that this pandemic did not have to last anywhere near this long, but you've got these adult children, a lot of people who I used to follow and look up to, basically just bitch, man, whining and bitching, and not even able to do something so fucking simple, because apparently there's some sort of symbolism behind it. Oh, if I wear a mask, that's some sort of oppression. That's symbolic of I don't know. Oh, we got to inject Middle Eastern fear again. Oh my God, it's like having to be a woman in the Middle East and cover my face. As if a once-in-a-century pandemic isn't something that we deal with all the time. This isn't the time to try to come up and claim your 15 minutes of fame by being a contrarian. You're being a fucking idiot. So yeah, obviously people I used to follow and respect on some level. It wasn't a whole lot of them. It was maybe one or two. And then of course I find out other people that I know are anti-science or anti-vaccine. It just irritates me. This isn't up for discussion. Your opinions don't fucking matter, because by you claiming that your liberties and your freedoms are being taken away, you're actually in turn doing the exact same thing that you're claiming, aka projecting, but you're doing it way worse. You're actually a really, if this term makes sense, you're a negative multiplier. With what you're doing, you're actually harming people. By not wearing a mask, you're not only not protecting yourself, you're not protecting others. What harm does it actually do to wear a mask? It's all a net gain. And just because it's not a 100% effective form, it's one of the best things we can do, aside from social distancing. It's a myriad of things. Science is an evolving thing that new information comes out, we have to update things. But because a human like Dr. Fauci made one or two incorrect comments, or misspoke for pretty altruistic reasons, thank God he's still a widely trusted person, that he's being taken seriously and he's not being muzzled. But I'm just sick of all these fuckers, man. Y'all are the reasons why this shit's still going on. You're bitching about it's still happening. It's because of you. And governors like Ron DeSantis in Florida, Brian Kemp in Georgia, and I'm not just going to single out Republican governors, because I know that Cuomo up in New York is riddled in scandal right now. But aside from the whole nursing home thing, which was pretty bad, generally, per capita, New York's not doing terrible. And people like to just kind of take baseline numbers without any context, or certain factors on face value, without considering, what? Maybe the virus does better in terms of ravaging places like New York that are densely populated, or because of the climate up there. Maybe the virus has less of a chance to ravage a state like Florida because of the climate down there, because of more of the outdoor activity out there. But because, and I'm born and raised in Florida, I can shit on my own state. Because Florida is so full of idiots and has such idiot right-wing leadership at the helm, of course Florida's doing shit. Relative to other densely populated states like California and New York, other scandals aside, if we're just talking about the coronavirus, New York and California are doing way better. It's just happenstance that they're led by Democrats. Not my favorite Democrats by any stretch of the imagination, but Democrats are more what's that expression? Reality has a liberal bias. It's fucking true. It's fucking true. And of course, I just rattled off Florida and Georgia. We haven't even gotten to the fucking worst people now. Texas, Mississippi, but Texas by a long shot, because by giving the rest of the country the finger when the finish line is essentially on the horizon with regards to being able to vaccine enough people to maybe reach herd mentality, no, herd immunity by maybe the summer or early fall. It's on the horizon, but then nope. Greg fucking Abbott has to show that everything is bigger in Texas, including the disregard for human life and logic, just so he can take focus off the fact that his response to that snowstorm was so abysmal. The difference between my criticism of state leaders and what I see from the right is, even when they're not on trial and we're not really having to talk about it anyway, I'm willing to admit that states like California and New York, which are densely populated, they make up so much of the American populace. So of course those are going to be more challenging states, and they're on the coast too. So they're already at a disadvantage with this pandemic, and held to a higher standard too, apparently. I'm willing to admit when my party fucks up, and they do. My party's pissing me off in quite a few ways right now. But it is by no means the lesser of two evils. It is not a fucking contest that the Democrats, for years, for decades, with this pandemic and otherwise, getting relief to people, even if it's being stupidly compromised by Democrats that are, or Republicans that are masquerading as Democrats, like your Joe Manchins and your Kristen Sinemas and maybe some others. But they piss me off. I have no loyalty to them, and as much as I love Bernie Sanders, I don't have any loyalty to him either. I have loyalty to policy and to values. And fortunately, with Democrats, they've been far more likely to exhibit and demonstrate those values the past couple of decades, at least in my lifetime. So it sucks that this whole thing had to be politicized. Obviously, the fish rotted from the head down. The last president before Joe Biden did that. This could have all been taken care of. Who knows if we would have had a pandemic reach the states if Hillary Clinton had won. But I think if it did, it would have been handled a lot better and a lot more effectively, because the last time we've had a couple of epidemics or mild pandemics like the swine flu or Ebola, Obama handled them pretty well, and so did Biden. And they had the fucking gall to try to say that they didn't handle that well, while they had tens of thousands, at this point hundreds of thousands more deaths, blood on their hands. Fuck them. Fuck the projection. Fuck the bitch moaning and complaining about wearing a piece of cloth over your face. Take the dick out of your mouth and stop being a bitch. No one's impressed. No one's impressed when you as an adult are trying to strut around the store, trying to be badass with your thoughts of like, look at all these sheep caring about their health and the well-being of others. I read some shit online and some blog. Go fuck yourself.